When it comes to speedrunning, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 isn't a game that comes to mind for all too many people, and even within this sphere, the no DLC categories for Xenoblade 2 are often considered to be the inferior option compared to the DLC runs, because of the higher amount of RNG needed to achieve a good time, as well as the more punishing nature of mistakes. However, this run still includes a variety of interesting strategies for fights, which leads to a speedrun which contrasts with the more popular DLC category. Any % no DLC normal disallows the use of any items from the Xenoblade 2 expansion pass, which gives us many core crystals, powerful accessories, and most importantly, Crosset and Corvin, the DLC blades. So we are much more limited in terms of what we can work with, but the strategies we see are far more similar to what you might expect in a traditional playthrough. It feels like we're facing the game on more equal footing. I recently achieved the world record time in this category of 4:27:03, an improvement of just over 3 minutes, and so here is the world record explained for Xenoblade Chronicles 2, any % no DLC normal. Before I even start the run, we are getting time saves in. You'll see that my run is done on a completely fresh file with no previous save data written. This is done in order to save time from a shorter first load when selecting new game. In the first fight against the King Crosstip, you can observe the first piece of combat tech used in the speedrun, auto attack cancelling. This is performed quite simply by flicking the stick in any direction after an auto attack, to remove the end lag, allowing for arts to be built up much faster if the first stack in the sequence is faster than the others, like with Rex's broadsword. After the Big Job Preparation's main story quest, we are introduced to the mechanic of leveling up using bonus XP at inns in order to accumulate levels faster than usual. This bonus XP is acquired in a variety of ways, such as discovering locations, completing quests, or by killing enemies in specific ways. I'll explain the relevance of this later, but at this early point in the game, we only have a little bit of bonus experience, still good enough for me to level up Rex from level 2 to 3. With some of our leftover money, we purchase a few more items before boarding the Maelstrom. These are a muscle belt, which increases strength by 20, and 2 fluffy hats, which increase our ether by 20 as well. These being flat stat increases mean that they make a much more significant impact early in the game, where stats are very low as is. Therefore, we can make Rex hold his own much more in combat. Additionally, we will also purchase 8 Sparkle Sugars. These are pouch items, which can be equipped to raise our abilities in combat for a temporary period of time. These can range from pretty useless effects such as plus 4% Blade Arts effect, to the very beneficial Arts Recharge pouch items, such as the Sparkle Sugar. With this, the speed of combat is greatly increased, as arts will become available to us much more frequently. Pouch items with Arts Recharge should be equipped to your party members at all times for an optimal experience. After we are taken onto the ancient ship, we will swap out Nia in exchange for Jin. The 2 mandatory fights here are very short, and so Nia's healing is irrelevant for us. In addition, Jin also out-damages Nia to a significant degree, so he is a necessity to the party. Before I enter the first fight on the ship, I also equip the 2 accessories I purchased, as well as the Sparkle Sugar. However, most of the damage in these fights will be done by Jin or Malice instead. After I do a full auto attack combo on the lethal Lysic King, I begin to move around to the back of it to continue my assault. There are 2 main reasons for this. The first is my newly learned art, Sword Bash, deals bonus damage when attacking from behind. Secondly, I'm baiting the Lysic to use the art backstep on me, rather than Jin or Malice, as me getting blown down allows for the stronger party members to still be doing as much damage as they can. I also run over to the side at the end of the fight, as that is where I will spawn after skipping the cutscene. I then perform the first glitch in the run, known as Ship Clip or Ether Cylinder Skip. This is performed by running at the wall in between these 2 rocks. Sometimes this wall can be very stubborn, however I got through on my second try, placing me out of bounds inside the ancient ship. From there I'm able to navigate while still OOB, and land on top of this pipe. By lining up my vision cone specifically, I can just walk forwards and place myself back in bounds, and right into the next cutscene trigger. This leads us on to the next mandatory fight of the ancient ship, the Megalo Aligo. We start the fight by running to the left and drawing our weapon. This is done in order to ensure that the Aligo's opening art, Cursed Cuisine, only hits Rex and allows for Jin and Malice to take some of our aggro. We run away from the Aligo after unloading a bit of damage onto it. This is done in order to avoid the art Fin of Fear, which is done about halfway through the fight once the Aligo enrages. This is because we are already damaged, therefore the area of effect art will simply kill us as we lack the tankiness to survive, or the healing capabilities to stay at full health. For the final boss of Chapter 1, we need to fight Malice, but now our combat options are opened up, both by a new art and the introduction of blades. Pyro opens up combat for us by allowing us to use specials charged up by arts. In order to get the most damage quickly here, we use a tier 1 into a tier 4 special. Tier 4 specials are much more powerful than the rest, as well as having the added benefits of granting invincibility during the animation, as well as pausing driver combos. After doing this, I rush another Tier 1 special to finish Malice off, and end the chapter. I finished the chapter with a 10:46, being only 4 seconds off my best chapter 1 time, even ending it with a best segment for Malice. What was that actually? Is that golding? Yippee! Okay. Alright. I guess we take those. Gold Malice. A running theme of the early game in the no DLC speedrun is that Pyra sucks, with very weak damage all around, which isn't exactly helpful as the main attacker blade of the party. It is for this reason that we'll take a few detours in the process of this run in order to bulk Pyra up somewhat. The first of which being at the start of chapter 2, where I grabbed the wing chip from this chest off to the side. We can see this additional damage helping out against the Worm Eater Brog, where we can now finish it off quickly with a Pyra tier 2 into a steam bomb from near. This Brog actually has very high agility for this point in the game, but I got fairly lucky here with only 2 of my auto attacks missing, and none of my arts. Once we reach the upper level of Gormott, we now need to start gathering landmarks to walk back to later on in the run. First off, we get Lighter Oasis, so we don't need to backtrack as far later, Boldball Gate for use in Chapter 4, as well as Dawnview Grotto for use in Chapter 3. You can also see me picking up collection points along the way. Here I have the specific goal of searching for 10 pieces of puzzle tree wood, 12 other common wood collectibles, and 12 veggie collectibles for refining articles later. In this run I had 12 vinegar leaves and 9 puzzle tree wood entering Torigoth, which is very solid, however only 4 out of the 12 veggies. You can also see me going out of my way to collect 3 treasure chests in this section, first containing a scale chip which will be equipped onto Dromark to increase his damage, but more importantly his healing. The second we open for an eye patch which increases arts damage by 20%, as long as we cancel the art, which should apply everywhere. And finally the third chest we crack open, just so we can sell its items for a bit of additional money. Whilst all the enemies we've fought so far have been fairly squishy, Bridget takes things up a notch and allows us to demonstrate the general strategy that will be used in most fights with Pyra. We first set up a heat from Pyra tier 1, then look to a steam bomb with Nia, on a break if possible, and then finish the combo with a tier 4 steam explosion from Pyra, also preferably on a break. But here it isn't that big of a deal since I was able to finish her off without getting one. The reason getting breaks are so central to the Xenoblade 2 speedrun is because of the fusion combo mechanic, where a blade combo is done on top of a driver combo. To put simply, performing these fusion combos will greatly increase the amount of damage that our specials deal, meaning some fights will require these fusion combos to get the fastest strats. This damage will increase further if you are able to perform 2 stages of the blade combo on top of the same stage of a driver combo. For example, Steam Bomb and Steam Explosion on the same break will be a double stack, whereas the Steam Bomb and Steam Explosion on different breaks would be single stacks, and give less damage overall. Basically, you will be a lot more successful if you understand fusion combos very well. Now we've just gotten used to having Nia in the party, we lose her after beating Bridget and she'll be replaced with Tora for a while, after we've created Poppy. This point in the game is mostly just running around completing errands, however I do go out of my way occasionally. First of all, I grab the Compassion Booster from this barrel, which will be important when I'm doing the Blades Gacha. On top of that, I also grab the Lance attachment from this chest after a close encounter with the Yoop and Gravel. This will also be important later in Chapter 4, but for now we don't actually have a Lance Blade in the party. After we've gotten all the parts for Poppy, we need to do the Tiger minigame, which lets us gather ether crystals and other parts for upgrading Poppy. We'll have to be extra careful here to get the best possible loot. Oh, maybe next run. Now is the part in the game which we need to board the Titan Battleship. After grabbing my final piece of puzzle tree wood, I managed to do this. Jumping down to the lower branch and surviving with 1 HP remaining. This was planned in advance, as level 7 Rex or any other level of Rex ending in 7 can survive from this height at 1 HP due to a rounding error. Once I reach the portside walkway location, I take a detour to Argentum. This is in order to get a chest with some money in it, 10 juicy salmons and a coil chip. By walking back to the portside walkway after this, the cycle for the soldiers will be reset, allowing us to quickly run inside the ship and continue the story. We then equip the coil chip onto Pyra to quadruple her damage, upgrade some arts, and increase Tora's HP by 24% with the Abyss Vest. We also feed Tora 3 braised Cloud Sea Sharks before overriding that with Sparkle Sugar. The reason for that is to increase Poppy's Trust stat. Trust directly links with the auto attack stat, so more trust equals more damage, which is especially important for Tora, who lacks damage to begin with. Before we finally rescue Nia, we need to take down 2 Ardanian soldiers blocking our path. The tankiest sergeant goes down first, getting killed by an Earth to Fire Blade combo initiated by our brand new Poppy. After that, the soldier will go down very quickly with a quick fire tier 1. Since we lack a healer in this formation, we need to get creative when it comes to not letting ourselves die. If we get a level up mid-combat, we'll have our health completely refilled, allowing for us to keep up the offensive. In this run, I wasn't too at risk, but I still went up from just under 400 to just over 800 HP from this level up. We swapped to Nia once getting her back. This is not for her combat abilities, but rather in order to utilise Dromark in our movement. By going up to this bridge's Dromark, we can push ourselves into a position facing slightly up left, and then jump slightly up right to cross a fence and land near to the cutscene trigger, allowing for us to quickly swap to Rex and give Poppy a bronze ship I picked up earlier to boost her damage and help her keep aggro. In the Morag and Dougal fights, we're looking for a steam explosion, preferably on a break. Whilst Morag is a lot tankier and won't even die to a steam explosion on topple, Dougal can deal far more damage, making him a much scarier opponent. Even in this run, Nia was left on 1 HP during the Dougal fight, but I was able to get the kill off before it got too much worse, finishing the fight with the best segment. Morag also went fairly well, getting some good breaks, and finish her off with a joint combo finish stone. The Chapter 2 exit was a 42.54, being one of the few times I've gotten out of Chapter 2 in under 43 minutes. I was, of course, feeling good about my pace, but with there still being so much left of the run, I could very quickly lose it all. Based, so goddamn based. Ooh, 42.54, cute, actually so cute. We begin Chapter 3 by making preparations to set sail for the World Tree, give Gormott his puzzle tree wood, change the tide levels, and slay a unique monster. Whilst we may encounter some along our path, fighting any of these unique monsters is optional, so what makes us go out of our way this time? In this run we take down the ramped up Bunnet moonlighting Elwyn, who is near the vicinity of Torigoth and drops the Ox Core, like an accessory for blades, Affinity Max Attack 1, which when equipped will increase damage dealt by 30% when we have max affinity. Even for only being the weakest form of the Ox Core, this is still a very considerable increase to our damage, and so we refine it and equip it immediately. The fight only took 23 seconds in this run, so the detour is very much worthwhile. After arriving in Uraya, we are sent straight into the first story fight of Chapter 3, after a short walking section against Vandam and his right-hand men, Yu and Zuo. We start off this fight by focusing attacks onto Vandam, and using a tier 1 from Pyra after using all of Rex's arts. We then anticipate the focus of the fight changing, as Zuo has the art Axe Break, which will draw all of our aggro to him. At this point, our objective is just to wait to be able to target Vandam again, so I use a tier 2 from Tora as soon as it's available for some extra damage. At this point, I'm able to swap back to Vandam and should be able to use Nia's Steam Bomb to keep the combo going. She got it at the last second in this run, which is obviously terrifying, but even after that happened, we still need to move forward to the next step of this fight. The two main combos that stem from fire, at least in the early game, are Mega Explosion and Steam Explosion, with the critical distinction being that Steam Explosion deals area of effect damage, whereas Mega Explosion does more damage but only to a single enemy. So in fights like this, where we do have multiple enemies, a well-positioned Steam Explosion will be able to kill everyone in the battlefield, even from basically full health. So I get to work on positioning myself correctly for the AoE, and hoping they get into a good position themselves. In this fight, they bunched up perfectly for Steam Explosion to hit them all, with Nia even getting a break for additional fusion combo damage. With an additional handful of attacks, the fight was over, netting an 11-second best segment for me. Once we get to Garfont Village, it's time for us to start making some more preparations. This comes in the form of 3 chests worth of money, Generous IT, which helps party gauge gain, which will help out with a mechanic we get later, a Hero's Harp, which will be used on Tora to help him get specials faster, and a Colourful Feather to give Tora aggro at the start of battle. The Arden fight gives a very important buff to Rex and Pyra, in the form of turning Anchor Shot into a topple art, meaning we don't need to rely on Tora's pathetic AI to get them off. In terms of fight strats, here is a standard Steam Explosion, where we can fairly reliably get double stack fusion due to the lack of break resistance from this Arden. However, I messed up here. Since Vandam automatically inserts himself into the party here, we can sometimes see the Arden launched, which has a set animation, thus not freezing for special animations, such as tier 3 blade combos. Since I wanted to avoid the slower animation of Burning Sword, I walked away to break the chain link and bring my special back down to tier 3. But since Vandam launched, this meant the driver combo ended too early, giving me no fusion combo at all, losing about 10 seconds. In preparation for the next fight, we start up another menu. First off, get rid of Vandam from our party. We need a tank, and Pyra is a far better attacker than Rock. We also upgrade some arts for all our party members, equip the items we bought in Garfont, and open our Blade's affinity charts to increase their key affinity and give them more damage. The fight against the spider looks, at first, as though I'm going to go for another steam explosion kill. However, after setting up the steam bomb, I just let it wear off despite having my tier 4 ready and waiting to go. Out of everyone we've fought so far, the spider is the tankiest, and has some really powerful attacks on top of that. Queen Bomb as an AoE blowdown art, which deals about half your HP, as well as Termination Blast, which will kill Neo or Rex if they get hit most of the time. For this reason, I opt to take it safer by whittling her down with damage over time. The best way to do this is with a Volcano, on a fusion combo if possible. This combo is especially powerful here as the spider will take additional damage to fire at half HP, which is why I wait until now to do the combo. If you look into the center of the spider for an orange number, that is the DOT value, a fairly respectable 1413 in this fight. The spider also drops a beastly core crystal, which may or may not come in handy later. If you move off this ledge in a specific way, you can sometimes trigger the cutscene before landing on the ground. After skipping the cutscene, we are introduced to Akos, as well as a new mechanic, the chain attack. Because of this being the chain tutorial fight, we can split this into two sections, with the first being us setting up a steam explosion on Akos. Whilst breaks or topples aren't required here, it can still be pretty scary due to any party member deaths, meaning we can't actually do the chain attack, resulting in a time loss of around 2 minutes. This is why you see me sometimes spinning in circles. I don't want Rex to have too much aggro from Akos, so I'm trying to remove as much of it as possible by not attacking. After we use the steam explosion, we can go right into the chain attack. Akos still has about a third of his health left, but this chain attack will be able to take him down and then some. Chain attacks work by giving you the opportunity to use a special from each of your party members in turn, with each round of the chain attack being stronger than the last. By performing a full blade combo, we are able to get an orb, which will provide us with additional rounds of the chain attack, with Akos starting with one by default on this fight. When I use Poppy's tier 2 special in this chain attack, we get to see Overkill start, and the bonus value is growing underneath our health bars. This number represents how much additional XP I get after the fight has concluded, and is the main reason why there is no grinding in this speedrun. Here my overkill value is 341%, which means my XP at the end of this fight is what you'd normally get versus Akos, but multiplied by 3.41. Since I snagged a lucky break, this is a much higher amount of XP than what you'd normally get. Usually, somewhere from 270 to 280% is good. After some more walking, it's time to behold the mighty Zeke von Genbu, Bringer of Chaos! Mostly known as Zeke, and often addressed as the Zekinator! It was a pretty simple fight overall. The goal here is just to get a steam explosion off on a fusion, and then clean him up as quick as possible. Everything went as planned in this run, so I was able to get a small gold here. After this fight, you'll see me sit around on the pause screen for a few seconds without skipping the cutscene. This was done intentionally in order to set up the most broken glitch in the game, Zombie Hover. By holding all 4 shoulder buttons, X and down on the D-pad, we can trigger a death code left in by the developers. Usually this will just kill us, and respawn us back at the nearest landmark. However, if you hold the button code in a specific way before skipping a cutscene, you'll be put into this state of hovering. The next step is to target an enemy, then disengage to freely walk around again. From here, we're able to survive any amount of full damage, which we use to jump right off this cliff and cut around a solid chunk of walking. Since we're at the lowest level now, we no longer need Zombie Hover, so switch to Nia to turn it off, as any party swaps or warps will get you out of Zombie Hover. Nia still sucks in combat, so the reason we swapped to her here is to set up another trick, like the bridge jump in the last chapter. By lining ourselves up in the corner here, at about a 45-degree angle, we can go into the menu and swap Rex and Nia. This interaction will cause our hitbox to be shifted forwards, allowing us to clip through Tardy Gate. After arriving in Fonsa Mima, we dispatch the Violent Driver with a steam explosion and then go to the hobby shop. These pouch items are not good, but we buy them anyway and then sell them back to the shopkeeper. The reason for this is so I can buy the Knick-Knack Deeds, which is only possible after buying everything else in the shop first. These are important due to giving us a permanent boost to our running speed by 5%, which may not seem like a lot, but adds up significantly when you account for the amount of walking in this speedrun. From here, we have one boss fight remaining in Chapter 3, Malos and Akos, or Makos as it's often shortened to. This is considered to be by far the hardest fight of the first 3 chapters, and not uncommon to see people consider it the hardest in the entire game. And for good reason! This fight sucks! They have knockback, break, topple, shackle driver, blade combos that grant massive block rate, shackle blade, taunt, blowdown, launch, smash, tier 4 specials that can kill you from full health, on top of a pretty sizable amount of HP. Thankfully this is a 2-phase fight, so we only need to take one of them down to half HP to move on to the next phase, with us taking down the squishy Akos here. Instead of going for our standard Steam Explosion routine here, we instead use a Mega Eruption, with the finale of the combo coming from Tora. We use this because blade combos ending with Earth have the bonus effect of shielding Shackle Driver. Yup, that's a combat mechanic. Meaning one of Akos' attacks in Checkmate is now useless and Shackle Driver is no longer an issue. From here we hide in a Common Blade to avoid our affinity lowering when Shackle Blade goes off, as well as waiting for Malos to use his most powerful attack, Deadly Drive. Special animations, such as the chain attacks or tier 4 specials, also have the added benefit of granting full invincibility, therefore we can use it here in order to keep Tora alive. I do the chain attack on Akos and he immediately uses Crew Ward to shackle my blade afterwards, and at a very late time, meaning hiding in the Common Blade was not worthwhile. From here, I look to set up another Mega Eruption to try and finish the fight off. However, due to my lowered affinity on Pyro because of the Shackle Blade, my damage was just shy from advancing the fight, as the loss of max affinity meant lower damage all around, as well as no access to Pyro's tier 4 special. This was already getting pretty slow. And then Malos used his taunt special Deathmatch to focus us all onto him. Since Akos was so close to death, I was actually able to use the AoE of Pyro's tier 2 to hit both him and Malos, dealing not even 2000 damage, but still enough to end the phase. Now, onto Makos phase 2. We awaken Mithra and are given a massive boost to our agility, to the point where we won't even get hit. We start off this fight by disengaging and running towards the edge of the cliff. We then begin running across and push Tora off the edge to his death. We do this in order to set up a faster way of doing this fight. By luring Malos to the edge of the cliff, we can have him use his attacks in a specific way to have him push himself off. Ideally he'll fall off around here, however with some adjustments, he will eventually fall, even if it takes some time. Whilst we also have the option to do something similar to Akos, it is far easier just to use Mithra's new power, and use a Photon to Gamma Ray to Supernova Blade combo to take him down. Despite both phases of Makos being pretty poor, this Chapter 3 exit still managed to be a 125-55, which was my best ever exit for me, and put me solidly ahead of the world record at the time. If I had played Makos perfectly, I would have gotten a high 123 here, showing that there's still lots of room to improve in this category, but with the amount of RNG involved, that time save can be hard to get. Literally a minute ahead of world record. Yeah, 125, almost 10-minute Makos. What? Why? Chapter 4 is probably the most infamous part of the Xenoblade 2 speedrun, and for good reason, as shown almost immediately by blade pulls. For some reason, Xenoblade 2 is a gacha system entirely controlled by RNG. On the surface that wouldn't be that bad, however the blades from here are not just useful for saving time, but actually required to finish the speedrun because of field skills halting our story progress. In terms of what is needed to finish the run, we need 1 Wind Mastery Blade, 2 Fire Mastery Blades, and 3 Earth Mastery Blades, not counting any of the blades we get during the story. There are also some field skills that rare blades have, which can save time, but are by no means required to get a solid time or to finish the run. These are Nopon Wisdom, obtained through Boreas, Ancient Wisdom, obtained through Perun, as well as Keen Eye and Fortitude, which have a few blades with that skill. As for this run, I'd say blades were solid, but with one major downside to them. My pulls started off strong with the Compassion booster I picked up in Chapter 2, giving me my first of 3 Earth Blades. My first Fire Blade also came up quick, a Fire Ether Cannon named Mew. The other Fire and Wind came up next. After I pulled 10 Common Core Crystals, I moved on to pulling my Rare Cores. This is to force the game into giving me a random blade because of the Pity Group system, which will activate after a certain amount of cores are pulled without awakening a rare blade. There are 5 different groups you can be a part of, which each group having 3 rare blades, ranging from minutes of time save to useless. I still never actually got to see my group, because of pulling Nim just before I would have received a Pity Blade. Someone like Boreas or Perona may have been in that Pity pull, but I can't really complain since Nim is on the upper end of rare blades to get, because of her Earth Mastery helping towards the minimum requirements to finish the run. Even if we didn't get to see one this run, getting a good Pity Blade can sometimes be the saving grace of a run. It's also known for being very silly, due to the group of Boreas, Agate, and Godfrey being repeated due to an error in the code, making it twice as likely to get any of these blades, around 13% each. With 5 cores left, I managed to pull my final Earth Blade. Despite the fact I had all my required blades and knew there would be no Pity Blade in sight, I still continued to pull. Why is this? The reason is, for a better Fire Blade, we'll be using this not just for getting past field skill barriers, but also for combat to contribute fire to our blade combos. We don't need someone like Dagus or Newt for this, ideally just a common blade with either a Twin Ring or Bitball weapon type. These are the best weapons, simply for being the most adept healers, since they will be used on Nia. Additionally, they also have a breakout which can contribute greatly to fights, since fusion combos are so important. Despite going through all my cores, pulling several non-fire Bitballs and Twin Rings, and even getting Ursula, who's surprisingly useful thanks to Fortitude, I still didn't get what I wanted in terms of a Fire Blade. This was the one major issue with blade pulls this run, since it meant a lot of my Chapter 4 fights would become sketchier because of a much lower healing output. Other than that, it was good though. It's actually pretty uncommon to get all of the required blades to finish a run in the first set of pulls. Usually I'd have to do 2 or even 3 sets of blade pulls to get what I need. There were still 4 more core crystals before I had to do any fights with the Fire Blade, so I was hesitantly hopeful. On my way to the next major story event, I went around these boxes to pick up a chest. Inside was both an extra core crystal for me to use, on top of a Hunter's Chemistry Ox core. This will assist us greatly in our run since it has the effect of giving increased affinity at the start of battle, allowing bigger damage earlier, especially when considering our Affinity Max attack core, making the following fights faster. After skipping the worst cutscene in the series, I take a leap down Argentum and start talking to these 2 Noppon, over and over again. Poppy has a field skill called Noppon Wisdom which is required to beat the game, with the requirement for level 2 of the skill being talking to 20 Noppons. However, the game doesn't care if we just alternate between 2, so by doing this 15 times we'll have Noppon Wisdom level 2 by the time we need it later on in the chapter. I also revisit the dessert shop in order to refill on Sparkle Sugar, as well as getting a Narsapad Jelly, which is like a Sparkle Sugar, but better. Before continuing with the story, I also talk to Razzly Dazzly and get some information on a greedy monster in Moradane. After warping to the Torigoth base entrance for the Stop Thief quest, I run and collect these veggie spots. Due to my mediocre luck in chapter 2 and 3, I still needed 3 veggies for my Ox cores. These spots can drop from 2 to 4 items, meaning here I got the worst possible luck, having to run to the further away spot. Also, whilst this quest has a variety of people to talk to, you only need to speak with Nugby to finish the investigation. You may have noticed that before I open the map, I will almost always face my camera downwards before warping. The reason for this is due to menu lag. Every time you open the map in Xenoblade 2 in order to warp, there is a chance that you may be stuck waiting for it to let you do anything for a few seconds, which can obviously add up in a speedrun. Often it's pretty consistent as to which warps will give you menu lag and which won't, however pointing the camera down is thought to make menu lag a little less common. The basic strategy of this fight is the same as against Vandom in chapter 3. Land a steam explosion on one of them and use that to get rid of the rest. Here we want to target Cartbreaker Gradeg, due to his taunt art pulling all the party's aggro on him anyway. Pyro tier 1 to Steam Bomb with Dromark to a Pyro tier 4 on a Topple will get the job done. Here Menacing Joe and Benjamin the Brain lined up in the perfect positioning for the steam explosion to get all 3, resulting in a best segment by about a second. After entering Moradane, I run around this corner for a chest containing a Fusion Up Ox core, as well as an additional core crystal. The Ox core is more of a safety measure, but can be helpful in upping your damage, especially since most fights will be done with the fusion combo. Now is the time for my last Jeffet pulls to replace the Ether Cannon. After entering Alba Cavendish, we'll buff our Fire Blades, so having that blade be either Bitball or Twin Rings is best. And after these pulls, we got nothing of value. There was a Twin Rings and a Bitball, but neither the element I needed. We'd be going in with Mew the Fire Ether Cannon. Since the fights in Moradane are much tougher than what we've seen before, barring maybe Makos, we need to upgrade our setup for the chapter ahead. After selling all useless items and a rare core crystal to get an extra 13,000 G, we give Dromark and our Common Blade some additional auto attack strength with a chain chip, buy a Steam Belt to increase our strength by 20%, and refine our Hunter's Chemistry and Fusion Combo Up Ox cores so we can actually equip them. The final thing we purchase here is the book Love Beyond the Clouds, which increases special charge, special damage, as well as giving a boost to affinity at the start of battle, thus meaning faster max affinity. After the party formation changes, we switch Nia over to our party leader. This is done in order to exploit another zombie hover. There are various vents releasing steam along the rooftops, and so by being in zombie hover state, we can pass through them without the risk of dying. Since the pattern for the soldier was bad, I still need to turn them off with the valve, but I was able to use zombie hover to save a little bit of time on that bit of movement. Now with the Lila fight trigger ahead of us, we take a quick detour to Torigoth to make some final preparations for the fight. First off, I go to the inn to make everyone level 26. Since you gain more XP and SP for being underleveled going into fights, I keep Nia at level 26, despite being able to bring her up to level 27. We start off the next menu by awakening the new king of the speedrun, Wulfric. Wulfric is a Mega Lance Blade, guaranteed in the story from the Elder Arachno fight in Chapter 3, and is able to be awakened after the Bandit fight. His main strength is his strength, with all of his skills gearing towards big damage, with the downside being that if he does get aggro, he'll go down very quickly. His 3 skills involve increasing damage at max affinity, increasing critical damage, and increasing damage to toppled or launched enemies. Being Earth Element also gives us easy access to the very powerful Mega Eruption Blade combo route, which will do a good job at killing most enemies throughout this run. Next up we give Rex the Steam Belt we just bought, alongside the Lance attachment we got way back in Chapter 2, since it would just be a straight damage upgrade to Wulfric. I also begin to feed several juicy salmonids to Rex, overriding each one as I do it. This is to increase Wulfric's trust and get him to the next key level of affinity. Since staple foods are Wulfric's favourite as well, this means more trust is gained. We also use the Love Beyond the Clouds we just bought, and feed Tora some roly-poly maracas. Not for trust this time, but to unlock Leaping level 2 on Poppy's chart. We finish off by opening Poppy, Wulfric and Mithril's charts, but preparations aren't quite over yet. By running up to the rooftops up here in Torigoth, there is a barrel we can open if we have Super Strength 2 and Knock on Wisdom 2, which we've just unlocked. Inside is a wood chip, which is very solid for this point in the game. By equipping it on Wulfric, we can bring his auto attack stat to almost 300, far higher than anything else we've seen so far in the run. We also equip the Ox Cores we refined earlier. We take Affinity Max attack off Pyra and put it onto Wulfric, as well as giving him a critical up, both of which synergizing well with Wulfric's skill tree. We also give Rock Hunter's Chemistry and the common Fireblade fusion combo up. With Hunter's Chemistry, it doesn't actually need to be on the blade you have equipped to get the affinity boost at the start of battle, so it basically works as another Ox Core slot for Wulfric. Now we finally enter the Lila fight, we are introduced to the world of Wulfric, as well as the world of Chapter 4 Break RNG. A sizable amount of these bosses here only have a chance of a breaking of around 25%, which can be very difficult to get. This wouldn't be as much of an issue if most fights didn't rely on this break to kill, so a lot of Moradane is just making sure you can capitalize on the few break opportunities you get. Since we now have Wulfric, the prevailing strategy in these fights changes up as well. Now, instead of Steam Explosion, Mega Eruption is quite a bit more powerful, with the blade combo route being a stun from Tora and Poppy Alpha, Volcano with Neo's Fireblade straight into Wulfric's very powerful tier 4. In terms of how we build up our specials, that process is made faster by Love Beyond the Clouds, but we also mainly use a combination of Rex's X and B-Uts, Strong Horn and Heavy Hitter. As for auto attack cancelling, Rex moves pretty quickly with the Lance, so he can do the full 3-hit combo, and then move very slightly to cancel the end lag and go again. Lila herself is actually one of the hardest fights in the run. On top of being very hard to break, she also hits very hard, meaning losing several minutes or even suffering a party wipe isn't uncommon here. The main offender in this regard is her art Dynamite Pup Punch, being the main reason to be careful about aggro management in this fight. This art has the bonus effect of Affinity Down, which, given how important max affinity now is to Wulfric in particular, is very detrimental to be hit by. Dynamite Pup Punch can also kill you from high HP, reducing your affinity even further. For Lila specifically, I build up to my tier 4 and start off the setup for the Blade combo with a Tora tier 2 after Lila has used Dynamite Pup Punch on him. I then begin fishing for breaks with Wulfric and Nia, hoping to see one of them in a couple of attempts. I get pretty lucky here with a second try break as Nia's Ether Cannon actually came in clutch for that. However, this gave way to the horrors of Mew the Fire Ether Cannon. Having fast specials is very important in Xenoblade 2, not just in a speedrunning sense, but a fast special is going to make tight windows for fusion combos more manageable, and therefore allowing for easier double stacks, for example. A slow special, on the other hand, will make these windows tighter, or even impossible in some cases. And this Blade Mew has some of the slowest specials out there, being about twice as slow as some of the alternatives. Since this was on a break which had a pretty long duration, the double stack was achievable without an issue, but I was pretty concerned for the fights ahead with a special that slow. Also, Wulfric strong. Lila had hardly any damage on her before the tier 4 and it still managed to kill. Pyra could never. Straight after making it out of Lila, we go straight into another fight against Morag. I also make this mostly joking comment related to Mew's special speed before running in. Yeah, if Tora goes for Topple, I'm just not getting that off. Morag takes a similar approach to Lila, but we'll use the additional Ardanian soldiers to build up our special gauge before going in on Morag. Usually this fight is a lot nicer in terms of break RNG than Lila as well, but remember what I said before going in? Yeah, Tora toppled straight away. The special was just so slow, I wasn't even able to get close to a fusion combo, let alone a double stack. On top of this, Morag also killed me right after since I'd taken too much aggro for fishing for the break, meaning I'd have to build up a bunch more affinity before going for another Mega Eruption. After getting another break, now with max affinity Wulfric, I was just about able to get a double stack fusion combo, with Tora's topple almost messing things up again. We then go into a chain attack on Morag to try to get enough XP for level 30 before the next fight. Ideally this chain will be on top of a break or topple, since the damage applied from the fusion will also help out with the chain attack. Since I hardly got any benefit from this, my chain attack was pretty weak overall, with only a 310% overkill, meaning I was unable to reach the goal of level 30 after Morag. The reason level 30 here is so important is due to level differences causing penalties to break resistance. If an enemy is 10 levels or more above you, then break resistance is reduced drastically, and the next fight is against a level 39 enemy. Level 29 is 10 levels below, meaning I need much better luck to get past. To complete the next story quest, we need to spend a little time running from location to location, which can indeed be sped up by utilising zombie hover in some places, and we can also use this time to purchase some items that will come in handy later. Several ether cylinders for salvaging, as well as a hearty dose of dessert pouch items for increasing arts recharge. We also pick up this core chip, the magnet chip. By putting it onto rock, it gives us the bonus effect of increasing Rex's strength by 50, adding to Wulfric's already high power, even if we aren't using rock at all. The next barrier to our progress is in the form of field skills. We need Knock on Wisdom level 3 to read the writing on these barrels, however right now we only have level 2 from Poppy. One option to get past this is by doing a 30-minute Merc mission, or we can alternatively get one more level of Knock on Wisdom somewhere. Thankfully for us, a guaranteed blade with Knock on Wisdom is in the vicinity, and it is to do with the greedy monster that we got the information on at the start of the chapter. By doing some platforming, we were able to jump down to the lower level of Moradane and run to the salvaging point here. The information we've acquired now means that we can spawn the Glassmith's Marin occasionally after doing salvaging, the foe we wanted to be level 34. After killing it, we get the Lucky Core Crystal, containing Cassandra, second place in the Xenoblade Portugal Blade Tournament, and with Knock on Wisdom level 1 as soon as you awaken her. I start off salvaging with the Silver Cylinder, since that is guaranteed at least 5 item drops. But why does this matter? Another benefit to salvaging is that we need a certain amount of mechanical parts in order to unlock the different levels in Dromock's Ancient Wisdom, which is needed later. The first level requires 5, and the second requires 20, so we should be able to get the first level up right away by using a Silver Cylinder. Mew also has the random field skill Salvaging Mastery here, meaning each salvage was slower, but yielded more results. After the 4th salvage we got the Marin, so now the hope was get lucky enough to win. The general strategy here is much like the others with Wulfric: Tauros Stone, Neo Volcano, and Rex Mega Eruption with a fusion combo. The main thing to look out for here is the highly damaging AoE arts of the Marin, mainly Jetstream. I got some more dumb luck here, and despite being 10 levels under, managed to get 2 different breaks, with the second being at a good enough time for a double stack fusion and a very good fight. And after getting that nice bit of time save, I immediately throw some away by trying to do the field skill check even before pulling Cassandra. And then pulling her onto Rex, being the slower option as that needs more menu time. Also, something I failed to notice after the Marin fight was that Dromock's Ancient Wisdom did actually go up to level 2. Now we have Cassandra, we're done with her, and send her off on a Merc mission. This one is Lunch of Love, lasting 30 minutes, but having the reward of another Hunter's Chemistry Ox Core. Moving on a bit with the story, we're now faced with another Zeke fight, with this being quite a bit different from the last time we faced him. Obviously, since Wulfric is much stronger than Pyra, we get an advantage in that regard, but this time we're doing more damage than usual. Since Wulfric is Earth Element and Pandoria is Electric Element, we are opposites and therefore do more damage to one another. Cause that's a mechanic that exists in the wacky world of Xenoblade 2. Of course, this means we can do hella damage, but also puts us in a much greater danger if we do get aggro, since our poor defenses are exasperated. Managing aggro in this fight remains very important, and is still an essential skill in no DLC. Since I wasn't being careful enough here, a dynamic spark sword took me to around 140 HP from full health, but I was able to keep myself alive long enough to get my Mega Eruption, dealing an unnecessary amount of damage to Zeke. This Turkin will aggro us if we go in front of it, so we've got to slowly walk alongside it before opening the vent. The mandatory fight against 4 Turkins isn't too special. Just go around each of them using arts and specials, trying to keep them as bunched together as possible for AoE damage. Much like our previous fight, Lila 2 is still very threatening, leading to me taking an alternative approach here, which loses about a minute, but is much more consistent than relying on a break. I build up to a tier 3 with Wulfric, making sure to remain as passive as possible to avoid taking aggro. After she uses her second Dynamite Pub Punch, I go straight into my tier 3. I use this over the tier 4 so I don't get as much aggro, whilst achieving similar damage results. I then swap over to Mithra and use a Rolling Smash to try and keep my aggro down, using a few arts to try and build back up to my tier 4 for when I go back to Wulfric. I also make sure to use Nia's special once I see health starting to get low. This is because I know that she'll want to swap back to Dromuk once party health gets low, which would ruin my Blade combo. Swapping back to Wulfric now with a tier 3, I'm able to use one last breakout to try and get some lucky extra damage. With this, I can just charge up my tier 4 and use it as soon as possible. We then go from here into a chain attack. Since she enrages to electric, we get a substantial increase to Wulfric's damage as well. The next fight actually has a larger amount of XP that we could get, but doing it here gives us enough XP to learn a critical skill before that fight. This skill is Arts Chain, one of the best ways to speed up combat. Instead of having to slowly cancel out of auto attacks, we can go from art to art instead. This will speed up special charge, as well as giving more arts damage, and more overall freedom in combat. But before we can try out our sick new skill, we have to do Factory Skip. The collisions on this corner gives us a small space that we can clip through and land out of bounds. From here we are able to navigate on an OLB pipe to this door frame, and jump to near the cutscene trigger, saving a few minutes compared to running around normally. The hardest element of this trick is definitely clipping out to begin with. Too early and you'll clip, but will not go far enough to reach the pipe, and too late you'll fail to clip through to begin with. Especially when taking it slow and steady, the out of bounds movement can be made very consistent, which I'm able to demonstrate here. From here we go into the Rosa fight, which is set into 2 phases, the first of which being only with Nia and Rex, meaning no matter what, someone you don't want to be taking aggro will be taking aggro. However, you only need to get her health bar to around 80%, so a simple tier 4 from Wulfric will end this phase. The only thing you need to worry about is spacing around Bam Bam Rocket, which is an area of effect topple art, which can be comboed into you getting launched, so I make sure I'm in a spot where only I'll get hit. Unfortunately, getting rid of the rest of her health isn't as easy, even with a third party member. Much like many fights before us, the strategy here is a Mega Eruption on a double stack fusion combo, with Rosa being so bulky to the point where even that won't necessarily kill, leaving us with no other alternative strategies like with Lila 2. Additionally, her break resistance is higher than anyone we've fought so far, meaning we've got to fight against even more RNG here. After going a whole 9 breaks to try and get the fusion combo with no reward, I was put into a rather awkward situation with this fight, as my Volcano had run out, meaning I'd have to retry the combo from scratch. My decision here was to use Wulfric's tier 4 once she enraged to fire. Rosa is Earth Element for most of the fight, meaning our Wulfric damage is reduced, but will very briefly swap to fire and take normal damage. From here, I charged up my tier 4 as fast as possible, and used that as well as the Volcano to get another Mega Eruption. As a matter of fact, I actually got the double stack at this point, where the additional damage I was getting from it was completely irrelevant. I did at least receive some extra XP this way from the joint combo finish at the end of the fight, which is pretty valuable since Rosa has a ton of XP in her. In the course of about 5 splits across Chapter 4, I went from 3 minutes ahead to about 120 behind. Of course, I did make a lot of mistakes across this Chapter 4, but most of that time loss was still a result of bad luck, which just goes to show how difficult it is to get a strong time in this category, when there's so much working against you. Despite this, I wasn't set back, since I knew I could still claw the run back to being ahead from the last fight of Chapter 4, Petroka and Mikhail, abbreviated by speedrunners to Patmik. Another 2-phase fight here, with the first again only requiring a small chunk of HP to go down to start the next phase. We start off on the bulky and Mikhail, and use a quick combo of Wulfric tier 1 and Wulfric tier 2 to get the Gaia Crash combo and move on to the next phase. Also, if we end this phase whilst Mikhail is toppled, and in the process of performing a special, the game will soft lock, since to progress phases, the drivers need their weapons back, but driver combo timers are also made infinite. Much like some of the other fights before this, we will be using the area of effect from our blade combo finisher in order to get both enemies in a fight down at once. Much like Steam Explosion, Mega Eruption also has an AoE around it, meaning if we position well, we can get both Mikhail in the main combo, and then Petroka alongside him. However, this one is a little different from those in the past, as Mikhail is a lot harder to break, and Petroka loves to keep her distance, meaning it can be very hard to get an optimal fight here. I actually got very lucky here, with Tora getting a topple to increase the damage, and Petroka moving right up close to where she needed to be. Usually I would also rather swap to Morag over Tora in this fight, since she can provide another breakout, which is usually more valuable than Tora's inconsistent topple. As a tank, she is also more capable of holding onto aggro than Tora is. From this point onward, we'll be using a team of Rex, Nia and Morag whenever possible, with one exception. But the reason I didn't swap to Morag here, I simply forgot to do that. Party formation menus can be very easy to lose track of when you're concerning over break RNG and keeping the speedrun in the green. Despite this, I managed to finish Chapter 4 27 seconds ahead with a 2:20.24, meaning I had a very solid shot of world record this run. I had also made it out of the much harder first half of the speedrun, despite there being 6 chapters still to go. Green! Alright, I'm pretty sure this is my first ever time being ahead against my Chapter 4, which is nice. Literally ever. At the start of Letheria, we take this airflow field skill check at Merkle Bay Islet in order to take a tighter line around the section rather than going up the traditional way. This movement saves around 8 seconds and is only possible in categories which put Rock in the party, like any % no DLC normal. Once we reach Fonset Village, we watch this heart-to-heart with Wulfric, Rex and Tora, or less so watch but rather skip through. This is to unlock the 3rd stage of Key Affinity on Wulfric's chart, increasing his power and allowing for his skills to be further upgraded. I also switch from Pyra to Mithra now that we have the ability to do that freely. Out of the 3 Zeke fights, round 3 is the most dangerous in the speedrun, but thanks to the addition of Arts Chain, we can also be very dangerous to Zeke. I lost my max affinity as a result of Dynamic Spark Sword, killing me just before I was able to get my Mega Eruption off, but I was able to utilise Wulfric's strength to get a solid backup. By getting a break and waiting for Tora to use his topple, I was able to get a tier 4 stone on this topple and kill Zeke, even with around 2/3 of his health left. As for base damages of blade combos, stone is one of the strongest for the initial stage of the blade combo. We just don't get many opportunities to see it due to Tora being the main one setting it up. Once we were able to get to Temperantia, we utilised one of the most important skips with the zombie hover. By entering Temperantia with the code held, we will get put into the falling animation. By letting go once this starts, and then holding it again once Nia makes the E sound, we get put into our zombie hover state and can walk around Temperantia with it on. We start this off doing nothing out of the ordinary. We pick up the beta scope from this chest, a very powerful accessory with the benefit of reducing enemy break resistance, letting our fights become a lot easier. Another benefit of zombie hover that I have yet to mention is the ability to pass through cutscene triggers when the state is active. Whilst we are unable to skip any story flags in Xenoblade 2, it does let us reach some areas earlier than expected. Importantly for this run, this includes the lower level of Temperantia. Once we go into that first cutscene, a death trigger will make itself present along the lower level, meaning we leave it until later. It's also beneficial for us that the trigger for the landmark extends out far further than the cutscene trigger does, as swapping onto Dromark lets us go into cutscene triggers or get landmarks even in zombie hover state. You might also notice that the area of Temperantia feels very empty right now. This is due to enemies not spawning in until later on. Whilst this means we could explore the entire area completely safe from high level monsters, we want to head straight to the Jagron Citadel. Before we get there though, we need to get a menu done in order to further prepare ourselves for the fights ahead, and power up our new party member. We start off by viewing the returned Merc mission to receive our unrefined Hunter's chemistry. We then go into the Blades menu and overdrive 2 of the Earth Blades to Zeke. If you're familiar with the concept of a HM slave, this is what we're doing here, lumping our field skills with the unused party member. I then equip my Earth Blades around the party, as well as Ursula on Nia. By upgrading various arts, I also make my party more capable in combat. In particular, by upgrading Rolling Smash and Blaze, I'm able to do a better job of keeping my aggro off of Rex and rather on Morag if possible. I'm now able to unlock Arts Chain for my other party members, as well as assigning arts which can be used at the start of battle on Rex and Morag, providing additional benefit in terms of getting specials faster. I finish off the menu by equipping accessories and by opening Wulfric's chart. On Nia, I equip the beta scope we just got, as she is our primary breaker, and on Morag we take off Tora's accessories, Colourful Feather for aggro at the start of battle, and Abyss Vest for increased HP. Now finally reaching the Jagron Citadel, we can see the results of this 2-minute detour from the story. By excavating this chest, with the Earth Mastery level 4 from Wulfric and Nim and my 2 commons, and Fortitude level 2 from Poppy, Cutie and Ursula, we can open this chest, which contains 3 Shining Star Chips. These are items expected to get around Chapter 9, but we can get earlier by exploiting Zombie Hover and the lack of enemies spawning. By equipping this on our most prominent blades, Wulfric, Dromark and Brigid, we can increase the damage and healing output significantly. Wulfric's damage is increased more than 1.5 times, Dromark is now more than 3 times as strong, and Brigid becomes 3.7 times as powerful. On top of these, the SS chips are also good for improving our block rate, and not even having any detrimental impact on critical rate either. We've now equipped ourselves enough for the next set of fights, known as the Gauntlet. This is composed of the power lines Jin and Aishma's core, and despite our new chips, these fights can still cause a major issue for speedruns. Granted, the first fight against the power lines is very simple. By setting our party's aggro onto the core, we can target the lines with Rex. By building up my tier 4 and mashing through the prompts, the power lines go down very quickly. I start off the Jin fight with an instant heavy hitter, and then start waiting around, maybe with the occasional auto attack. I'm playing passively here in order to make sure I avoid aggro before Jin uses Skyward Slash, which causes affinity down. Additionally, I need another way to set up Stone, with this now being Wulfric's tier 1, which will put a load of aggro on me. I then swap to Mithra to keep aggro down, whilst listening out to Jin saying, "This world has no sense, no meaning," as that is his cue for Stun Swallow, with this being a launch counter. Jin isn't that tanky, so we can keep going with a Mega Eruption once he's used his most powerful arts. Shining Star Chips make quick work of him. Much like Rosa, Aishma's core is both pretty tanky and has high break resistance, but in this case it is much easier to get around. By using a tier 4 with Wulfric to start our blade combo, this gets a solid chunk of its health down quite quickly. The next thing we need to do is look out for Razor Thread, which is an AoE Shackle Blade, which will lower affinity if it connects. Therefore I swap over to Rock, either to dodge it completely with their evasion art, or to have less affinity with Rock instead. The goal here is to get the core to around half HP so that it enrages to Electric, meaning the Mega Eruption should just kill from this point, even without a fusion combo. The core fight here proved to be very annoying, with several topples rendering me immovable, but I at least managed to avoid a death, and was able to barely avoid Wulfric being hit by the Razor Thread. I ended Chapter 5 224 ahead of my PB, with a 247 flat and a best possible time of 4 hours and 19 minutes. Usually this kind of pace was nice to see leaving Chapter 4, so going another 26 minutes on a run with that much time to spare was a very good sign. How's the pace? The pace is, it's okay. It's alright. Oh, 419 PPT in heckin' Chapter 6, you love to see it, dude. When given the option at the beginning of Chapter 6, we take Nia out of the party, meaning it is just Rex there. This is in order to skip the slowdown when initiating conversations, caused by your AI party members having to catch up with you. Whilst collecting information from people, we are able to skip a solid amount of walking by picking up the Goetius Wharf No. 2 landmark and warping straight to it. This is because the trigger for the landmark stretches far beyond where you spawn after warping, which will put us right at the end of the wharf and next to the person we need to speak with. During the quiz, we know what the correct options are, so we can do the inputs for those every time. Also, the discussions in between are sometimes faster to mash through and sometimes faster to skip, with the first 2 being mashed and the last 2 being skipped. After finishing Banner the Schemer, we run and refine our final Ox core of the run, using the last of our veggies to create another Hunter's Chemistry. By using 2 Hunter's Chemistries on our blaze, we are able to achieve max affinity almost instantly when going into fights now, therefore having great benefits to our damage output. The fight against the Tarkin Chefs is the only place in the run where Wulfric's tier 3 is the optimal choice, rather than his tier 4. This is because we want to get them in the AoE of Mega Eruption, however the damage dealt to a single Tarkin is too severe, meaning it'd die before the AoE damage went off. In this case we can instead use the much weaker tier 3 to wipe out 3 or even the full set of Tarkins with ease. Giga Rosa is another one of our fights that is critical in terms of bonus XP, with the goal of the fight to get her on a double stacked break or topple, and do a chain attack from there to get an overkill in the mid 300s, much like something how the Morag fight in Chapter 4 would look. However, Mew the Fire Ether Cannon did a little trolling here. Since the special was so slow, I was still able to get the total stack, however it expired before I could get any damage in the chain, leading to a poor overkill of only 283%, a whole 50% worse than the PB I was comparing against. One of the major mistakes of the speedrun came after this point. Not being aware of already having Ancient Wisdom level 2 on Gormott's chart, I attempted another 2 salvages with the goal of collecting enough mechanical parts to get the level up. This cost around a minute, as well, of course, a significant knock to my pride. Once getting to Tantal, we are now in possession of a Geon's Core Crystal. Whilst being one of the weaker blades in terms of combat, he does provide some useful field skills for later in the run. Ancient Wisdom and Leaping, both of which we already have level 2 of, but need level 3 by chapter 7. However, his Core Crystal was not quite ready to be opened yet. We require 22 encounters in order to do this. An encounter is where music starts when going into combat, meaning that a fight against 2 or more enemies is only listed as 1 encounter. Therefore, we start luring individual enemies where we can. Some enemies, such as these Wolves, will aggro us anyway, meaning we can aim to move in their path. Before venturing too far into Theoswar, we make some purchases. The first of which are accessories. The whip attachment and ring attachment help our other party members' strength, as well as healing for Nia. We also give Mithra a Lodronite chip. The most important stat for Mithra later in the game is critical rate, and this chip boosts her crit rate more than anything else we can get at this point. We also start equipping our new items. Moreg's Arts Recharge is made even higher with the addition of a pouch expansion, and another dessert item. We also finally give Rex the Nusper jelly that we've been keeping hold of since chapter 4, so we can see the increased Arts Recharge on Rex until the end of the run. We also unlock another level of key affinity on Bridget for a field skill slot later, and give her the Hunter's Chemistry as well as fusion combo up that we were using on Mew beforehand. The Tantal Knights don't have a tremendous amount of health, so they go down very quickly. But they also do enough damage to where they can also kill you very quickly. So for this fight you need to make sure you get good damage with Wulfric's tier 1, and hope no one goes down instantly. In a casual playthrough we are expected to do a very long descent down Tantal, however with the use of the zombie hover we can skip this requirement entirely, saving around 5 minutes. By holding the death code on the warp menu before going to the 3 vein crossroads, we can load in the zombie hover state. By drawing and sheathing our weapons, we can then run and jump off the side of Tantal, falling into the loading trigger. We still need to get out of the zombie hover state to start the next cutscene, so the fastest way to do that is by changing our party formation by swapping Zeke and Tora. The chapter ends with us facing off against almost all of Torna, starting against one of the most difficult fights in the run, Akos, Petroka and Mikhail, or Trio. We start off this fight by targeting Mick and starting off a stone, whilst the rest of the party draws Akos's and Petroka's aggro. Ideally the strategy here would culminate in a Mega Eruption, getting all 3 of them in the area of effect damage. However, this run had to perform a backup strategy. Akos has access to the art Black Wave, which has the effect of Shackle Blade in a certain radius. Ideally the volcano will go off either before or during this art, before we see Bridget shackled. However, I failed to do so, and had to work out a method instead of simply getting rid of them one by one. This was simply to use the power of Wulfric and have a tier 4 get rid of each of them. Whilst this has no AoE, it does a decent job of getting them individually down quickly. None of the trio are particularly bulky, since there are 3 enemies out in the field at once. Even though it lost around a minute, this was a fairly successful backup, and shows off the Wulfric crutch in action. The fight against Jin at the end of chapter 6 is the fastest fight in the run, since we only need to take him to around 80% HP before he beats us up in the cutscene. Despite this, there still lies some complexity, as we need to keep his aggro off of us, since him using Heavenly Disrupt will kill us from full health easily. After he's used that, however, a tier 1 from Wulfric will get a good chunk of his HP down, and a chain attack will finish the job, even if Skyward Slash kills your max affinity. I ended chapter 6 with a 3:13:42. While still a solid lead, there was lots of avoidable time loss as a result of not paying enough attention. Alright, this was a slightly silly. This chapter 6 was ever so slightly silly. I should have saved 30 seconds. If I wasn't like world's dumbest guy, I would have saved 30. But whatever, it's fine. We start off the chapter by immediately turning around and grabbing Anastasia's. We don't even need to warp here, but it's quick and a good source for extra XP and SP. Throughout Spirit Crucible, we are making sure to get in the way of some enemies in order to trigger encounters to get a Geon ready for Awakening. By running off the edge here, we can get most of the way down the room and cancel any fall damage by grabbing onto the ladder. From here we can tank the fall down to Cenotaph Bridge and continue on with the story. The reason we don't use a zombie hover here instead is because loading times can be inconsistent, increasing our chance of crashing or the zombie hover failing. Alongside Awakening Aegeon, I also equip a Windblade on Rex and 2 Fires on Nia in order to push through the first of 2 field skill checks in this area, with the first requiring Fire Mastery level 3 and Wind Mastery level 2. Spirit Crucible Elpis is not only infamous in Xenoblade 2 for restricting achieving max affinity, as well as not letting you do blade combos past tier 1 unless your name is Tora, or the confusing layout, but is also infamous for the fight at the end of the section, the Phantasms. These guys can do a move called Multus, which occurs at around half health and will grant evasion on top of spawning 2 more Phantasms to fight. Naturally this is very slow in speedruns if they use it just once, but we have a very special party setup to avoid this, which we begin work on now. The first step is to replace Nia with Tora in the party, and make Tora the party leader. We make Wulfric Rex's only blade, and give him the skill Combo Enhance to increase the damage ratio from cancelling arts. We then use our pouch items, a Sparkle Sugar on Tora for arts recharge, and several desserts on Morag to unlock Bridget's level 2 of Keen Eye. We unlock the skills to get past the next check, Keen Eye level 2 and Ancient Wisdom level 3, and after a bit of walking, we can enter the fight. The reason we want to use Tora here is for Poppy Alpha, primarily her art Big Boost, which is Tora's topple art, which is something can more easily provide in comparison to our Tube of Reserve party members. Naturally, enemies aren't actionable when they're toppled, including animations such as Multus, which serve only to slow down the fight. Therefore the strategy here is to have Morag break a Phantasm, wait until Rex is able to use his tier 1, and topple. The Phantasm should be killed during the topple duration, meaning it can't use Multus. Rinse and repeat this process 4 more times over, and we get a basically perfect fight here. There are of course a few issues with this strategy. First of all, the lack of a healer means we can sometimes see Morag taking large amounts of damage, or even dying herself, so we need to be collecting potions dropped as a result of the topples as well. The AoE of Wulfric's tier 1 is able to put Phantasms into Multus range as well. This almost occurred in this run, where I went for an early topple for safety, which also saw the added risk of the Phantasm getting up before dying. The final major issue of this strategy is Tora missing the topple art, but we all know that's just a player skill issue, and not the result of RNG being cringe. After this fight, Nia reveals her secret identity as a Flesh Eater, and can now be used alongside Rex as his blade. But we don't actually care, and continue to play as the silly little guy with the lance instead. We also pay a whole 1G to rest at Corinne's house, and level up Rex, Nia and Morag. Being at level 48, 48, and 50 here is acceptable, but a little low, so as long as I didn't make any XP related mistakes, I'd be fine. Once taking the boat to the cliffs of Martha, we do a quick shop for a male loincloth, which increases damage when the driver and blade are opposite genders, and 2 boxes of Ambraces, which increases damage against higher level enemies, which is everyone by this point. We finish with 1k left, perfect considering this is our last shop of the run. We make our way through the cliffs, setting up our party to make it through the various field skill checks, which require various levels of Earth Mastery, Wind Mastery, and Leaping, and start our preparations for Malos. The Malos fight actually has some depth to it, as we need to play around Monado armor, which reduces his damage taken by 80% for a good while. Naturally, we want to avoid using our Mega Eruption during this period, so we delay the use of specials as much as possible so the armor wears off first. We also spend much of this armor period in Rock, in order to use our evasion art through Monado Jail, an AoE Shackle Blade art. After he's taking full damage again, we go for an all or nothing break, see it get resisted, and use our tier 4. He doesn't quite die to this, but it doesn't take all too much cleanup to get the kill. The final fight of this chapter is against Jin and Malos, split into 2 phases. The first of which, Wulfric will either make quick work of them, or they'll make quick work of you. And the second, we will unlock a brand new blade, who will become the hero of late game for this speedrun. Phase 1 is as Wulfric as you can get. Charge a tier 4, and then dump it onto Malos to get him to half health, and progress the story. Much like in the last fight, Malos can use Monado armor and completely mess up the strategy here, so we swap Nia and Morag onto attacking Jin briefly, so that he doesn't reach the health threshold for using armor. This does mean we need to be extra careful with aggro, since this means that Malos is more likely to be attacking us. By being careful with how quickly I'm using my strong arts, I was able to build up my tier 4 before Malos got the kill on me, and use the final tier 4 of the speedrun. From here, we can't lose. Literally. The next phase of this fight, it's impossible to go under 1 HP. We also have Numa, the final form of Pyra and Mithra, and far more broken than anything before her, and will become the queen of chapters 8 through 10. can use any element in blade combos, can survive otherwise lethal attacks of 1 HP, takes the aggro for everyone else, increases party critical rate to 100%, reduces resistance to reactions like break, increases party accuracy and evasion, and will hit the weakness of the enemy, no matter what, further increasing her damage. She still does have some weaknesses, only being able to be summoned at max affinity with Pyra or Mithra, and when we have a full party gauge. She is also only able to be summoned once a battle for 60 seconds. But that doesn't apply to this fight, so it's a piece of cake. By setting up a Diamond Mist, which is the Fire, Water, Ice Blade combo, we can get them both at once, and they just die, and even get in a break for some extra XP from the joint combo finish. Finishing Chapter 7 in just over 3 hours 40 minutes put me in a great position for late game. Now all that was left was to close it out. Damn, almost a sub 340. Chapter 7. So close. 423 BPT in heckin' Chapter 8. Alright. Alright, bro. The reason I save and close out of the game after Chapter 7 is to prevent the game experiencing memory leak. After playing the game uninterrupted for a while, the loading speed of the game will slow down significantly, so it's actually faster to reload the game instead of waiting through that. We start off by changing our Ox-Core slots around to make Mithra a little better at getting to Numa quickly, with our critical up now moving to her instead, as the party gauge is filled by critical hits. We also make the objectively optimal decision to choose Mithra. The Deadfire Guldo and the Horde don't put up all too much of a fight. Use the very high hit rate tier 2 with Mithra to fill the party gauge, swap to Numa, and use the tier 3 we get for free after summoning her, and if that doesn't do the job, then just throw out some more specials. Also, Jin is here. Actually, Jin is pretty important. We swap to him over controlling Rex, since he has significantly more HP, meaning that when these Guldos aggro us when running past, he's less likely to die when compared to Rex. Going into the next fight will put us onto Rex control anyway, so we don't need to go back into the menu as well. Their most annoying move is Death Charge, which will inflict Blowdown, but we are able to mitigate that somewhat by turning to face it before getting hit. Blowdown will send us in the opposite direction to what we're facing, so by turning around, we can at least be sent in the direction we want to go in. Once making it to the Tawning Titan, we can abuse some of the wacky geometry in order to cut a corner pretty massively, saving a good chunk of time. Not as crazy as some of the other skips in this run, but still a nice little bit of movement. The Infernal Guldo is our next opponent, again split into 2 phases, with the first being with Jin and the second having the rest of the party introduced. I start off phase 1 letting Jin take some aggro so the Guldo can copy his element, meaning it becomes weak to wind in comparison to copying Numa's element and gaining no additional weakness. This extra damage allows me to go for a lightning bolt to quickly move on to the next phase. It was in phase 2 where I made one of the worst mistakes of the whole speedrun. When the party formation changes, it defaults to the party of Rex, Nia, and Tora, with us obviously wanting to change out Tora for Morag. Yeah, I forgot again. This is an especially important fight as well, as it contains a bunch of XP, meaning a good chain attack will have us set for the rest of the run. The strategy here is to set up a heat with Numa, wait for a break, use a burnout with Morag or Tora in this instance, and before it goes off, topple so we can get a nuclear blast on top of a double stacked fusion combo. Doing a chain attack here will bring about a massive overkill of over 300%, 3 times the amount of experience from this fight. Additionally, since I didn't have Morag in the party, it was much harder to get the critical break, as by looking at Nia and the Guldo's level, you'll see that she's 10 levels under, meaning break odds are reduced. Even when I finally got the break, this fight began trolling harder by using the art Variant Growth, which makes it immune to all reactions, such as topple during its duration, meaning I had to go for the much weaker fusion combo with a break. It also even managed to resist the topple, which is around a 5% chance before the chain attack, which could have helped a little with my damage. On top of this, it didn't enrage, which decreased the amount of damage Numa was doing, since enrage enemies are more susceptible to their elemental weakness being hit. The damage here was so poor that I only got an overkill of 124%, which began to put the run in serious trouble as a result of the horrible XP. As I began to take my walk of shame through the wall tree, trying to work out how to fix my XP, I performed one of the final skips for the run, Nuclear Dump Skip. By swimming towards this wall, if we are travelling slow enough in between the seams, we can push Threx through and make it onto the other side. We also need to find a way out again, since we can't get on ladders whilst in water, but that's solved by swapping our party formation by the ladder. After finding out Indol is actually evil, we need to make our way through one of the trickiest sections in terms of aggro management. There are 2 enemies patrolling this area, at random positions, who will aggro us if we get too near. We are looking for a key code here, which we need to be de-aggroed to pick up, so avoiding these guys is our top priority. The first of which was waiting for me behind the first corner, but by standing there I was able to wait for it to move away and run past. The second was actually moving towards me as I ran towards my destination, but didn't actually spot me. After picking up the key code, I walked back to the Sky Bridge and continued with Chapter 8. The final fight is against the Underline Star and several Underline soldiers. It is very simple. We build up a chain attack to summon Numa with Mithra tier 2s, then we use Numa's tier 3 and do a supernova, and everyone dies. Easy. Chapter 8 was done in under 4 hours, with a 3:59.18, placing me over 3 minutes ahead of my PB, with time to save in Chapter 9. However, due to that fight against the Guldo, it was still possible that I would end up 2 under level to finish the run. User tier 4 then, true. Heckin' Numa's optimal tier 4. Bro, heckin' sub 4, Chapter 8. And yet this might still not, I can still choke this. Chapter 9 is short, but categorized by 3 major roadblocks: the door, Jin, and Amalthus. First up, the door. Casually you need a massive amount of field skills to get through, Focus level 4 and Electric Mastery level 5, which will put a great amount of additional blade RNG into the run, but with a very precise jump you can clip through. Whilst not random in the traditional sense, it can feel random with how inconsistent and uncooperative this trick can be sometimes. I knew I could lose several minutes to it here, but it went like this in the run. Chat, remember when I was good at this strat? That day is today. It'll make my run dying to Jin even sadder. After doing some aggro manips in the wall tree, so we can interact with the lift rather than go into combat, we decide to take a trip to Fonset, rather than face Jin right away. By taking a rest at Corinne's house, I can level up. 57 Rex, 58 Nia, and 59 Morag. On runs that have a good set of overkills, I could be 2 levels up from this after resting, which meant I was now at serious risk of dying to Jin 3. We also need to upgrade some skills before heading in, which I was short on 4 SP for. I knew I wasn't close to fully exploring Fonset, so I went searching around there for an extra location, eventually finding Old Man Caskell's tree, which gave me the last bit of SP I needed. I was finally able to unlock Ultimate Relay, which increases chain attack damage, as well as some skills on Nia to give her additional arts at the start of battle, and increase chain attack gauge through specials. The final fight against Jin is one of the most dangerous in the run as a whole, with almost all of his arts granting evasion, Stun Swallow, Empty Moment, Bladeless Blade, or having a very detrimental effect on the party, Skull slash lowering aggro, Zero Zone nullifying healing for a time, or Heavenly Disrupt just killing you. With being so hard to hit and being able to get kills in lower affinity so easily, this fight can kill your pace pretty quickly. The strategy here is to build up Numa as fast as possible. We need to keep on using Mithra's tier 2 to try and get as many crits as possible, and hope to see Nia get breaks so we can get some extra party gauge from toppling him. Here I use a Ruinous Weather from Dromark to fill the rest of the gauge, but mainly to try and block a Skyward Slash that Morag was luckily able to use her evasion art through. From here we could now use Numa and use some of that Wolfric energy to get him in a Mega Eruption on a double stack topple, with having Numa's buff to getting breaks help us out here. This took Jin from around 2/3 of his health to death in just that combo. With 2 of the roadblocks down, all that was left was Amalthus. There are 2 major ways of doing this fight: with a chain attack to get a solid overkill and recover some XP, or the much cooler and faster way of throwing him into the hole. Since my experience was clearly very poor this run, it's pretty obvious which way I decided to go. That's right, I went and played it risky with the Malthus Gulf. In the cutscene, he creates a hole which is retained in the fight. This hole also doesn't have an invisible wall, preventing anyone from falling in, and if you do indeed fall in, that's instant death. So all we need after that is to find a way to get him in. Thankfully for us, he does most of that work for us. The art Guilty Road will make Amalthus jump right in front of the party member with aggro, which should be us, provided we have Numa out. So by standing near the hole and waiting for Guilty Road, we just need to give him that little push in. This can be achieved in quite a lot of ways, but a method that is very convenient for speedruns is to wait for him to use an auto attack and use a Steam Explosion. This will inflict blowdown, granting us an ultra kill on Amalthus, and turning this really difficult fight usually into something that can be done in less than a minute. I ended chapter 9 with the best possible time of 4:25:14, well on pace to get a sub 4:30 with just 1 chapter left to go. Of course, I was still nervous, as I knew if the run were to fail now, it'd seriously hurt, both for it being so late in the run, and since it was world record pace by such a large margin. It's fine, it's not fun without a little bit of excitement, alright? Not fun without a little bit of drama to it. You can finish without issue? I hope so too! The first thing to mention is the specific use of Ultimate Relay here, which does mean the final boss has no break RNG involved at all. However, the alternative strategy that costs slightly more SP is to use Drive to Win. This skill grants more party gauge gain when delivering critical hits, which means that it's easier to get to the stage of using Yuma in fights like Jin 3, or indeed the final boss. Both strategies have benefits and downsides, so it comes down to personal preference as to what to use. We also do our final menu to get prepared for the final fights. We dequip Rock from the party as they are automatically inserted as your controlled character if they're anywhere on the team, as well as giving Morag the box of Ambraces, since dealing more damage is more important than taking aggro now. The next 3 fights are against ghost versions of Nia, Morag, and Zeke and Toro, where we also lose the Aegis from the party, meaning Wulfric needs to have his last moments of glory. And they are certainly glorious, with all fights going down very quickly with the combination of Wulfric's tier 1 and sometimes a fusion combo. Since I'm so far ahead, I decide to go take an in for safety before going into the final boss, so I'm not incredibly underleveled. After having a bit of a moment with heart to hearts, oh my god, shut up Rex! I'm back on track to face against the final boss of the run, Artifice Ion. Another 2-phase fight. The main objective of the first phase is to use a supernova and chain attack. By grabbing potions and spamming Mithra tier 2s, we can build up our chain as fast as possible, whilst Nia keeps us alive with healing halos in between auto attacks from Ion. After I'm able to summon Yuma, I wait until either one of either Morag or Nia gets a break before toppling, using supernova, and entering the chain attack. By just using Yuma's tier 1 in the chain, we can progress to the next phase. In phase 2, we are given a full party gauge straight away, which means we summon Yuma as soon as we can. This will help us tank the first R Ion uses, Siren Buster. We also run into this corner so our attacks actually get into range of him when he's further away. We then rush setting up 2 full blade combos before our time with Yuma is up. The first I went for here is Electro Fire Storm, which we can have Morag help out with progressing. The other combo needs to be either a fire or water finisher in order to continue the chain attack, and I go with a Steam Explosion, finishing with fire, since that can utilise all 3 party members to do the combo as fast as possible. With only a few seconds left with Yuma active, I go into the final chain attack, which is guaranteed to kill because of unlocking Ultimate Relay. Here we use Yuma to deal 1 point of damage to all orbs, Dromark to deal 2 hits of damage to the fire orb, and Bridget to continue the chain attack. Another round of all of my tier 2s keeps the damage up. With my final special being Yuma's tier 3, I got the kill and got the world record time of 4:27:03 in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, 80% no DLC normal. Yes! He did it! Oh my... Sorry guys, While sub 430 is an important barrier to have been broken, it is far from the final one possible. Just by looking at this run, it's clear I could save about a minute from not doing extra salvages, and about 3 minutes with a better experience route. That almost puts this run down to a 4:22 just from that. By throwing on a perfect Makos and Boreas into the mix, that's another 5 minutes saved, and sub 420 as well. Of course, expecting all of this out of a single run is quite a lot, but if there's one thing that remains true across speedrunning, it is that any world record can and will be beaten.